Yeah, I've got it here written down on my notes. It's cornhole, oh cornhole, land this hole-in-one corn in the hole. Please fill the void in my soul with this hole that I fill with corn, oh cornhole, cornhole, lest I get beaten with the bean pole for not harvesting enough corn in the cornhole. Cornhole, cornhole, fill the void in my soul.
Roll the intro.
Evening, officer. Is something wrong?
Just keep your hands where I can see them. Routine traffic stop. We got reports of someone driving under the influence. You know anything about that?
No, I'm only under one influence.
What's that?
The influence of Jesus.
It's time for Under the Influence.
Yeah, we don't want to do anything to scare your children.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Under the Influence. I am your actually favorite co-host, Levi Thiessen, joined by my brother in Christ,
Jerry Crane. Also joined by...
Yeah, he's running late.
He's wheeling here from Wilsonville.
Yeah, it is stormy out. My little car was being pushed all over.
Your little car.
My little car?
Yeah, actually, my heavy car was being pushed over. Not pushed over.
Well, all there was a flagpole, a metal flagpole that has one of those massive flags that you would see at like a Harley Davidson or like a Home Depot.
Those are just specific examples that I wonder if the rest of the country, if Harley Davidson dealerships and stuff have them.
I don't know, because in Oregon, like those are the only places that
But
have.
that's the one in off of like Silverton Road, that area.
Yeah,
That's not the Harley Davidson place that has it, is it? Oh no, you're right.
No,
the Harley Davidson place, and I'm thinking that's the Silverton Road one. There's another one at that car dealership that's even bigger.
Yeah,
We have a huge one right off the side of the.
and there's some warehouse that has one off of I-5. But it was one of those flags, and the whole pole is like less than, it was like between 30 and 40 degrees, like tilted.
Yeah,
Like,
it was I think it was beyond a 45 degree.
yeah, that's what I'm.
Oh,
It's like a 30-degree angle.
I see what you're saying.
Went from 90 degrees straight up to being 30 degrees in the wind, being blown over. And the flag wasn't even close to touching the ground because the wind was just carrying it.
Oh, it was also when I drove by. When I was driving to church this morning, it was caught on one of the light poles.
Oh, was it?
That is actually over the freeway. So the flagpole is like just off the freeway in like a parking lot, and then it was caught on a freeway light fixture or something, and I was like, I thought it was going to fall over.
Yeah.
But it was kind of spinning too. It was weird. Yeah, it was really windy. Last night too was really windy. Like right when I went to bed in my little shack.
Yeah.
The tree was like really bad.
We were having electrical surges and stuff this morning before I left for church.
At home?
Yeah.
Dang.
Dude, every single time there's any windstorm, like there's a 50-50 chance of us losing power just because some like branches will fall on the lines.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah, because there's trees like everywhere.
yeah,
Around where you live.
everywhere where I live. Yeah, it's rough, but
3 less now though, right?
yeah,
The 3 in your
yeah,
houses?
they took down the 3 like 8-foot diameter sequoias that were in our backyard.
Jeez, 8-foot diameter.
Dude, they massive, like insane. So now there's just massive mounds of bark dust.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah,
Those are big trees.
it's very open.
Yeah.
and I don't like it.
It's like a fence of security that was there that's no longer there.
Yeah, it really was. And then we had to take out the actual fence that was there, which was just wire.
Oh.
Which I don't even think about. But yeah. So now my dad
didn't
just
realize
like
there was a fence back
parks between the mounds.
Just these mounds that once were massive trees. I mean, we live in an area that's full of trees anyway. I was talking to somebody I was at a wedding yesterday, and I was talking to somebody who's from Texas, and they, I guess, are here fairly regularly to just kind of look around, or to like, they have family that live out here, and so they come out here often, and they kind of do the tourist thing a little bit, like go all over Oregon. And so I asked her, I was like, originally, before I knew where she was from, I was like, are you originally from Oregon? She's like, no, you guys are though, right? And we're like, yeah. And she's like, oh, great. So have you been to like the Painted Hills? And I was like, I don't even know what those are. And then she's like, yo, they're just past Diamond. I was like Diamond Lake? She's like, no, Diamond, Oregon. I was like, I've never heard of it. And she's like, it's like by this other place. And I was like, never heard of it. And then I was like, you said you weren't from Oregon? She's like, no, I'm from Texas. I was like, all right, well, you know a lot more about it than I do. But we were just talking about how interesting it is where we live, because the Willamette Valley, when I've only lived here my entire life. So in my head, it's always like, well, Oregon, it's trees and green and blue with the rivers and all this stuff. But if you leave the Willamette Valley, it's just actually like high desert.
Yeah.
And it's
everything east is all high desert, and west is just like
more trees
grungy
and then
beach.
Yeah, grungy beach. It's like beautiful and rocky and still full of green trees.
Yeah.
It's just everything east of the Willamette Valley is like high desert.
Yeah.
Like you're in the old Wild West. Oh, look at that. Look who's here. Oh, you're going to have to turn your mic on. I used that new feature we discovered, which is that apparently if you push that big old button on the front of the microphone, it mutes it.
Yeah. Hey.
Are we live?
We are.
Sorry, guys, I got held up in a really intense game.
Let's go ahead and start it.
Hey, guys, welcome back to another episode of
An intense
Christian
game of-
Influence.
Christian
Under the
Influence?
I'm your host, as always.
He's a bit flustered. He's wearing his Trailblazers hat today. Which
Yeah,
means
we already did the whole intro thing.
You started the podcast without me?
Yeah.
We're 6 minutes
We've been
in.
going.
You're kidding. No. Oh, this whole thing's ruined.
What whole thing?
If I don't start the episode, is it even an episode? Let it be known. Roll the outro.
A great joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you were in an intense game of what?
I was in an intense game of cornhole. That's why I got held up. Sorry. I couldn't, I can't abandon a game of cornhole.
We were just at church, just like, we got to do this quick. We don't have a lot of time.
No,
He's an episode. And then you went and played cornhole?
The scheduling's really tight, especially when you're playing in the professional league, and I don't want to miss a game because...
It feels like a lie.
A lie? What are you talking about?
No, he was blown off the road, and then he found other strangers that were also blown because
I found other strangers that were blown off the road.
Yeah, and you guys just started playing
with that?
cornhole while you waited out the storm.
I mean, I appreciate, the ad lib, but I take it very seriously, the professional league of cornhole, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't make a mockery of my
we shouldn't joke so much about
game. It's a serious game. It's got a serious history. It's got a serious past. Have you guys heard about cornhole?
No, never.
Wait, you're going to talk about cornhole today?
Please tell us.
Well, I figured you guys would want to hear why I was late, and it was cornhole, and talk about cornhole. Infamously, I can't read lips.
Yeah, I covered the mic.
It's
so that
hilarious.
the mic couldn't hear me say this, and then I didn't say it. I just mouthed something.
Yeah, and I can't read lips. So
Like, it's a recurring
Did you
thing.
manifest something on the way here? Because I thought you were like...
I manifested the integrity to talk about a sport I love and care very deeply about.
I see. Well, don't let us hold
Center
you back.
stage.
Take it away. Yeah, let's...
Come with me on a journey as I talk about the history, the creation, and the elaboration, because I needed another word, of cornhole. I have some notes.
Can you start it off with your favorite league player of cornhole?
Probably J. Edgar Hole. He's been the leading player for about 16 years. My dream is to beat him. But more than that, my dream is to gain his respect.
J. Edgar Hole.
Does he still play? Or is he retired?
Is that his real name or his pseudonym?
I've never asked him. I've never met him.
Because with a name like Hole, and you play cornhole, I feel like he probably took that as a pseudonym. He's like, the game is so serious to me.
No, he
my
legally
last name is Hole.
He legally changed it.
I think he was probably drawn to what we colloquially call the hole because of his last name. He probably felt.
What's the Hole? Oh, is that what you guys shorten it to?
When we're throwing the hole around. That's what we say.
But it's the same.
You want to throw the hole around?
It's the same number of syllables. Why would you change it from cornhole to the hole?
Well, throw the hole, throw the cornhole. It doesn't make any sense.
Jerry, just because we are not part of the game doesn't mean that we know anything about it. He obviously...
I'm not claiming to know anything about it. That's why I asked a question.
We just kind of call it, I can't explain it. Why do you call D&D Dungeons and Dragons? You're just making the name longer. Why would you do that? If people call
They
it
did
that,
start
though.
with D&D. And
Yeah.
they were like, we should make these letters
They were
stand
trying
for
to figure
something.
out
Derek
what
and
to put
Diedrich
it.
were the creators of D&D. So.
That's true. Derek and Gary.
Diedrich Robert Pepper, but that's an entirely different story. Anyway, cornhole was founded in 1863, or at least that was the first documented case of a game that resembled cornhole. Plantation workers would, when harvesting corn, usually a donkey would carry a cart that they would throw the corn into after they'd done husking it. And then as a sort of sport to make out of it, they would put just a piece of wood over and cut a hole into it. And, this was the first instance of a game documented kind of similar to cornhole, though the name cornhole wasn't even established when they were harvesting corn.
Were doing it on the clock?
Yeah.
So they did something to effectively make their work less efficient.
Yes.
But for enjoyment.
No, competition often makes work more efficient.
Especially all those corn pieces that are missing until one goes in.
Oh, no. They hone their craft. It's less about...
Do they hone their craft?
No,
off
let
the
me
clock?
explain the story of cornhole, all right? Just let me get through it. Because this was not how cornhole was founded. This is the first documented case of a game resembling cornhole. They didn't even call it cornhole yet.
Right.
This was about
did they call it?
efficiency, right?
They called it work, Levi.
So it wasn't about how close you could get to the hole. It was about how many times you get the corn in the hole. And they actually had a song that they would sing because rhythm, as you know, helps.
Ooh, sing it.
Yeah, I've got it here written down on my notes. It's cornhole, oh cornhole, land this hole in one corn in the hole. Please fill the void in my soul with this hole that I fill with corn. Oh cornhole, cornhole, lest I get beaten with the bean pole for not harvesting enough corn in the corn hole. Cornhole, cornhole, fill the void in my soul. And then it would repeat. And
it wasn't called cornhole at the time.
This speaks to two things. One, the perseverance of mankind in a troubling situation working on a plantation, which was never fun, as far as I know. They made a sport out of it.
The indomitable
and
human
also,
spirit.
just the horrific acts that would happen, when people on these plantations being beaten with bean poles trying to play cornhole to fill the void in their soul. It's a sad, sad reality. The first documented case of cornhole trademark is actually in 1945 in Boston. Samuel
just
J.
after World War II.
Yeah.
They were just like, all right, guys, let's play this plantation.
I actually
worker
led
game.
into it. Well, no. See, again, Levi, that was just the first documented case of a game that resembled cornhole. Cornhole trademark was started by Samuel J. Corn in 1945.
So
he was a
plantation
veteran.
Plantation workers started the idea, but then some colonizer came along in 1945 and yoinked it and trademarked it.
You got no idea. This guy, Samuel J. Corn,
Yeah, 60 years after.
1945, veteran of World War II.
82 years after.
82 years after. Whatever.
He is now working as the financial executive of. Let me get the company.
He's still
name.
alive?
I actually
He
don't
is
know
now
this.
working.
What was the company name?
Does his life matter?
Fababaga. He was the financial.
Dude, the way how long you looked at it.
I just see Jude looking down at his notes, and then he looks up with this deadpan stare. Fababaga.
Fababaga. He's the
How do you spell
CFO. Pretty phonetically, Fababaga.
Fababaga.
That's two words.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where's the...
Faba space Baga.
Okay.
Yeah. CFO, Chief Financial Officer, got the position really because of
Of
nepotism.
what was
he had
the
no
what was
experience.
the company called?
Fababaga. Are you paying attention?
I thought that was the guy's name. That was
No,
the CFO.
it's Samuel
His
J.
name's Samuel
Corn.
J. Corn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Aren't
1945
you taking
veteran.
notes?
No, I'm not.
clearly
taking
he's
notes.
not.
I'm letting you take notes, and then I'm going to take I'm going to
Anyhow-
use your notes.
He isn't in high school anymore, Levi.
Fababaga is a company that makes like barroom games. So they actually invented throwing darts.
Wow.
The bowl full of peanuts that you throw in competition, but now
I thought
people
you
just
just
eat
old
them.
company.
Yeah.
Oh.
Chief Financial Officer. The company's going under because people don't believe in darts anymore. They're trying to stray
Wait, what
away
about
from
pool?
What?
What about pool?
Levi, that was invented in 1982.
That was invented by
1982?
Yeah. After the first swimming pool
Aga
was
Bafal.
drained, and then they filled it
After
with
the
beach
first-
balls, and then tried to get it into the sewage pipes.
Wow.
Anyway, back to cornhole, Levi.
Incredible.
Samuel
We're
J.
not talking
Corn.
about pool or billiards.
I'm barely making any progress in the story, and I have so much to tell. Anyway, company's going under. Barroom sports, nobody's interested in them because people suck at throwing darts when they're missing an arm from the war, turns out. So he's thinking, what can I do? What can I do to what can I do to make some money for this company that's going under? Then he only got the position. He had no experience
People
in
with no
marketing
arms.
or finances because he was a
Great
veteran.
throwing corn.
So it's because of nepotism he got this. And his family line, tracks back to a little plantation in whatever the date I was.
63.
63. And he goes, he's looking through his roots to find kind of like, what can I do to make more money in this company? Whoa, what's this? A documented case of plantation workers having fun on the job, throwing corn into a hole. And he goes, bam.
Wait,
What?
why do the people that lost their arms in the war that don't want to play darts want to do cornhole if
that's what
they
I'm saying.
still lost an arm in the war?
You ever heard of hacky sack, Levi?
Oh, they have
More than
feet.
one way to throw a sack. Yeah.
That's true. I'd love to see
Don't need
people
your
play
arm.
cornhole.
Yeah,
with their
cornhole
feet.
was originally actually played
You
by
can't throw a
throwing.
dart with
Do you
your
get
feet.
more
You
points?
throw the sack up in the air, which requires way less articulation than a dart throw, and then you kick it into the hole.
So they throw it with their teeth, and then
Well, they have one arm probably. Really unfortunate.
Wait, what
ones
about the
now.
guys that didn't have arms?
they throw it with their teeth.
Sorry, Levi, we can't cater to the whole world.
Well, you were.
Hey, what about the people who are deaf? How do they listen to our podcast?
Yeah. How do they?
Through
Do we have
vibrations.
sign language?
We do a lot of those.
We're coming out with a braille.
It's like a braille audible vibration,
If it's an audible vibration,
but they can feel it. I don't know.
here's the problem.
If it's
Samuel J. Corn sucks with names. Given his own, you can kind of tell.
Jeez.
His middle name's Jeroboam, by the way.
Jeroboam.
Jeroboam.
Samuel
Yeah.
Jeroboam
So his
Corn.
first draft for the name of the game was Bago, Beanbag, Toss, one word,
Bago beanbag toss.
Dummy Boards,
Oh, more.
Doghouse, Dad Hole.
This whole thing is the name, or these
No,
are
these are.
different options?
I'm putting a
Oh,
space in
these are-
between. These were his first
I
draft.
thought this was
like,
all
this is the
one
longest
long
name.
word.
He's sending him up to the CEO.
Why
and They're
Dad
getting
Hole?
rejected. I don't know, but that one's actually real. Sacks, one word. Beans, one word. Beanbag sacks, 2 words. Bean in the hole. Ramps. Bean bag holes. Ball bags.
All right.
And then he finally landed on cornhole.
Going back
Because
to the song.
Going
from
back
his
to
roots.
his roots, his last name,
Roots,
Corn,
Roots.
the movie, famously
movie,
inspired by the
Roots.
creation of Cornhole.
Plantation worker.
Plantation workers.
My name is Samuel.
Yeah. Anyway, it exploded in popularity. Bars were basically saved because they were suffering from prohibition still being in effect.
Cornhole in bars. I've never seen anybody play cornhole in a bar.
You apparently haven't been to many bars.
Outside of the story,
I
that is
actually
actually
haven't.
where cornhole started. It was a bargain.
It was a bargain.
It was a bargain.
Wait, this story's
But this story's the actual thing.
Of course, the story being the actual truth and not something I made up on the right here.
here.
And that's how cornhole came to be. And the first national cornhole championship was held in 2002, the year of my birth. And I think it's destiny that I'm associated with it. The same as J. Edgar Hole felt drawn to it. The same, like, destinial, which is a
But
word.
I thought that he was
path.
only part of it for 16 years.
Who was J.
He's
Edgar
been the
Pohl?
reigning champ for
He's-
16
yeah, the
years,
reigning
Levi.
champ.
If you ask questions, the least you can do is take notes so you don't ask dumb ones.
Again.
Again and again and again. Anyway, I brought a petition. Some guys and I who toss the hole around are
You
trying
toss
to
the
get
hole?
the name changed
To the hole?
back to Dad Hole. We think it's a more sophisticated and regal approach to the whole game, so we can be taken a little more seriously.
Yeah.
So people like you, Levi, can start taking our livelihood seriously.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, so I make most of my money.
Do you practice on the route?
Yep.
Oh, that's so dangerous.
Anytime I see an open mailbox, I have a bag of bean bags, and I just throw them.
Mailboxes.
Yeah.
I could just imagine so many like dents and
Yeah.
lost profits because you're buying so many beanbags
Well,
to throw on route.
this has been
Company.
a fantastic new segment. I
Story
think it's
time.
history with Jude.
History
I've got.
with you.
Do you guys want to hear about Dr. Pepper?
Maybe another
Next time.
Let me tell you a little something about Diedrich Robert Pepper.
I'm
But
gonna write it down.
that's a story for another time.
All right, Dr. Pepper with Jude.
Can you tell me if he was a doctor?
Okay, I will say this. If you look at Dr. Pepper, There's no period after the DR. And this is true because it wasn't after a doctor. It was after Dietrich Robert Pepper. But that's a story for another time.
Thank you for joining us, everybody, for this fantastic little segment.
That was a wonderful journey.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
Shoot.
Wow.
Want to see how long we could just sit in silence?
I just
before
watched
one of you
Jerry
said something.
stare at a book with pursed lips.
Oh, that was funny. That was it.
Oh.
That was a good
Well, to
question.
answer your question, no.
Okay. Why were you actually late?
I had to run by the house.
Okay. Just for fun.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense.
I had to go by the house anyway. That was part of my plans. but
Okay.
I didn't
That
know
makes
we'd be in
sense.
such a rush.
Oh, it's such a rush.
Such a rush. Rush.
Did we ever talk about on the podcast? This is kind of a derailing a little bit. Did we ever talk about on the podcast that our church is supporting Christian Influence?
We may have mentioned it once, but I don't think so.
Okay. Well, just because I think also the podcast can serve as a good way for us to kind of, it's a more personal way that we talk to people in Christian Influence, right?
Yeah.
Other than just like through text. And if we haven't talked about that yet, I think it's pretty exciting and it's pretty, I think we did talk about it because I remember talking about how it felt more legitimizing in a lot of ways as a ministry, but it is an important update. And so if we didn't, those that listen to this who also help support Christian Influence as a ministry know that we are more actively going out and searching for churches and for people to support it, because it's very important to us that we are able to dedicate more time and effort to this ministry. So I was thinking about that because today at church, obviously we had a wonderful message from our pastor, Chad Harms, who some of you have now had the pleasure of hearing his voice.
It's a great voice.
On this podcast. But he had a wonderful sermon today, and then afterward we had our meeting with the church, and then obviously they were talking about Christian Influence. And it was interesting because this is the first opportunity we've had since they've been supporting it to kind of give them an update. I didn't have very much time to do it, and I took 3 times as much as he wanted me to, which was like a minute and 20 seconds maybe. But
Oh, I think you're fine.
I'm
it
not
was good.
apologizing. I'm just
Did he-
saying I would have
did he
liked to
say
have
that?
more time to talk about things, but
He was just like, all right, give 3 bullet points.
he told me before, and he's like, 3 sentences, maybe 4. And then while I'm up there, he's like, and I had already decided when he said that, I'm like, well, I can't possibly make it 3 or 4 sentences and feel like I did give a even succinct but acceptable update to people.
Yeah,
And so I was like, I'm abandoning that, and I'll just make it as quick as I can. And then when I got up there, and I told him, I was like, I'll do it as quick as I can. And he's like, all right. But then we got up there, and he goes, 3 to 4. Like, I think he was telling me to like cut it, and I went, I don't do 3 or 4. I don't do the whole 3 to 4 thing, man.
Jerry pulled out a small notebook.
And then I went,
flicked through the pages. Doth I privily start?
I spoke in KGV.
Yeah.
Yeah. KJV. I said KGV.
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 I spoke with the KGB. No, but it was fun because I guess technically, since we have announced, because I think we talked about it because there was a Sunday where we went up there, right? And I think we talked about that. on here.
yeah.
But since that Sunday where it was announced that they were supporting us and that we were the 4 that were that go to the church that are spearheading it, that we haven't been able to give like an update to the congregation yet, and so I had an opportunity to do it today, and it was supposed to be very succinct, but I just talked about a few things that were important, and I thought that was pretty cool. It was pretty fun, and it was a good meeting. How do you guys feel about that meeting? We don't have to go into gratuitous detail, I guess, because it's about specifics of our church, so the people listening don't, what is it?
I felt better than the cliff notes of what
you've been
Matt
told.
had said that he missed from the elder meeting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, the meeting today was just about the future of our church, and we obviously go to a very small church, and so when you go to a small church, that obviously comes with some of its own challenges that are exclusive to smaller churches, and moving forward in 2023, that's just what the meeting was about. And but it was encouraging.
Yeah.
And I actually, because obviously small churches got smaller as a result of the COVID thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so detrimental, unfortunately, to churches and to the church body as a whole. But what?
Well, I mean, yeah, in more ways than one.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't go to church anymore because they're so used to being like, oh, I can just online listen to it. But you really don't most of the time. Even the people that are most effective at like making sure that they're listening online every week, it is easier to then also just kind of like, oh, I didn't have time. But because it's online, I can catch it later.
Having the service on while you
or while
make
you
breakfast
do
for your
things.
family or make lunch or something is better than nothing. But also objectively, like it's nothing compared to being in the auditorium with the pastor.
Yep. Auditorium.
Well,
It's a funny word. We definitely don't go to a church that has an auditorium for our pastor. It's very small.
gymnasium.
But that's true. Our church is located in a school, which I actually like where we're at. But no, we go to a small church though. And right now I think our concurrent like average Sunday is like maybe 40, right?
Over the past,
On like a good day, it is
on a good
60.
day, it's like 60. Yeah,
But there
40's,
have been
40 is safe, but it's on the upper end. I feel like.
Yeah, but since I started going there definitely have been Sundays that are lower than that or considerably. But I think on average 40 is probably in the
December
40s.
was really rough because there was a lot of people sick.
December?
Yeah.
December.
There was a week when I was going in the summer last year when we were still at that other church, we're using their building, where I think it was like 10 people. You remember that? It was because everybody was gone for various reasons.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting there. And you two, I don't think you two were there, actually. I think it was just
We
me.
may not have.
I think I was sitting by myself. Because I remember looking over and seeing, Chuck like 5 seats away and then like 5 other people. And I was like, this is it? But that is not to slander our church anyway. That is to say that it is growing and it is very exciting. But we had an interesting meeting today, and I feel very encouraged by it because I'm very happy. Excuse me, I'm very happy to be part of this church. And I guess I wanted to share that on the podcast because a lot of people are not actively involved in a church right now. And I would really like to challenge those listening that if they're not, to be. I know I have gone through plenty of time in my life where I was not actively involved. And actively involved doesn't just mean the greater portion of that which people often say, which we have often said here, like get involved in a way, like volunteer in some way.
Type of,
But it does also just mean like go regularly and talk to people.
Yeah. Don't just slip in and then
slip out.
slip
backseat.
out like at the very end.
Backseat.
goers.
Good gravy. Your eyes fluttered like a million times.
I didn't
when
want
you
to
tried
say
remember
the actual
word.
phrase because it could be offensive.
Oh, I don't drag.
Backseat Baptist.
Oh, I don't think that's offensive because it's not
No,
against
yeah.
Baptists. It's
You're
just,
so offensive.
Sorry, my firewall just was like, careful, you might say something.
No, I mean, that is the term because it's the backseat Baptist is just the person, regardless of denomination, who just sits in the back and then leaves, right? We have been backseat Baptists in our life. Growing up, I think there were times where our family, we just went to church, sat in the back, and then left as soon
Skedaddled
as
out
we...
of
Yeah, and throughout different periods of our life. But right now, I'm so happy to be like actively involved, getting to know the church body, trying to do things outside of church with them, and praying for them, praying with them, seeking opportunities to serve, and or even not to make it as though it's myself, just seeking opportunities, being requested to serve is cool. Like when either the pastor or somebody else involved is like, hey, we need you to help with this, and being available, or at least trying to be available, I think. But I say that because this has always been a truth about people in the church, is that it's hard to sometimes to get, not just to get butts in seats, but to get them to stay and to get them to actively engage in a church body, because that's what it's there for. But I think, like we were saying, more now than ever, it's so easy to just kind of write that off, when in actuality, being there, being present physically, and then actively engaging in conversation and in fellowship with one another it's transformative. I mean,
And it helps when you have those days that you just, maybe I'll just stay home today. Because then you know, they're gonna be like, hey, why weren't you there?
Yep.
Yeah.
How's
Having
things
people
going?
keep you accountable, you mean?
Yeah.
Not
And-
because they want another butt in a seat, but
No.
because they know you and they're invested in you. Like the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
And they know that
and you
there is
get
impact.
invested into other people,
Yeah.
and then you get like it's like a little reward for going.
It's like
It's
a
like a
reward.
It's
reward.
like a reward.
It's like a reward.
No, there's such a long. It's like a
It's like a
reward.
reward.
Dude, that's
We
such a
don't
good
endorse
point.
that film.
No.
But that actor,
Christoph
Waltz,
Waltz.
fantastic actor.
Fantastic. He's so cool.
He's cool.
He's just a cool guy.
I really hope nothing comes out after this podcast.
Yeah. Christoph Waltz, plantation owner?
Inventor of cornhole and plantation owner. The dark history.
Oh no, he stole it from his own workers.
I throw
Christoph
the
Waltz.
corn in the hole and it's like a reward.
Yeah, I want to challenge people. I mean, we kind of took a hard shift into away from fun, joking topics
Yeah.
to this, but I was just thinking about it. If you're not involved in a church, or you're like occasionally going, or you kind of say like, oh, yeah, when I go, it's this one, but you haven't been in 3 months. Like, I know it's hard sometimes. It's hard to commit, but today Chad said something where he's like, just plan your week around it. Or no, he said plan around it. But I was talking to somebody this week, and the phrase I had heard was plan your whole week around church. Like, why wouldn't you? Obviously, work is difficult and all this stuff, and if you have kids, and I get it. But for so long, for me, I was like, well, the times I have time, then I'll go to church, and then I didn't because it was like, oh, I have time. I'd rather sleep or do something else. But then when I started shifting where my week scheduling started and made it more that church is one of the most important things, or if not the most important thing. And at the very least, just engaging with the people at church. If I absolutely can't make it, because I mean, don't vilify yourself and rack yourself with guilt if for whatever reason you can't make it. But no, when you mentioned Levi, that there are still those days where it's like, oh, you get up and you're like, I don't know if I want to go.
Yeah.
Because
And it just being involved makes the experience so much better.
it does.
And like just talking to the people that are at the church and like being in, like, not like you don't have to be like volunteering, but just like being involved in
But I do
discussions
think
with people.
if
But
you find yourself doing that, you'll probably find yourself wanting to volunteer.
yeah.
At some point. Most
it's,
people.
It's something that comes out of it, but
Yeah, like
Yeah.
being involved in live stream. Frankly, I prefer to do live stream rather than just sit in a seat. Because personally, the way my mind tends to wander, if I'm looking at a screen and for the live stream, I'm cutting between which angles are looking at Chad, then I'm forced to be super in tune with not only what he's saying, but just like the flow of what he's saying, which can make certain points hit a lot harder for me. Because when he's enunciating something, I want to go from that wide angle to a small, which sounds stupid when I'm talking about it, or silly, but I'm like really, it's more impassioned.
You're like
Feels more
thinking about the
impassioned.
cinematography of it.
Yes.
And by doing that,
Yes.
it's making it hit you differently.
Which is not to say that I'm only gleaning from a performance that I'm making by cutting these angles together. It is, I am more in tune with the kind of impact that Chad is trying to deliver.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoy it.
It's probably because you're trying to figure out, like, where sometimes if you're just sitting there experiencing it, you might not
mind
be
can just-
actively looking. Yeah.
Yes.
Your mind wanders,
Yes.
but you might not be like, where is he trying to put impact?
Yeah, my eyes
But
are...
now you have to.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you're gleaning something from it. That's really cool. I never thought about that.
I love it. I love doing live stream. Also, with a grain of salt, take this. I guess I'm talking like Yoda now.
of salt, take this.
With a grain of salt, you must take this.
Depending on the type of person you are, when you have those mornings that you wake up and you're like, man, I was up late last night. Maybe for a justifiable reason, it'd be really nice to sleep in. Maybe just miss this piece of church. This day of church.
I'm going to miss
church.
this piece
Of church. If you have the time and you sign up for stuff, then you are responsible and other people rely on you, and it gives you motivation to go. And then you get to the point where you feel that less and less in the morning. Even if you're not doing live stream, you feel like, what if I go there and the person who just is doing audio calls in sick? Then I'm someone that I know and they know they can rely on. And it makes you, once you're a part of the foundation of a church, they not only lean on you, but you feel the responsibility of being leaned on. And it's not a weight, it's a privilege.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Responsibility is something that time and time again in my life, when I feel like, when I have those like deep questions that are racking my brain of like, what is my purpose, or what am I doing, or do I have any purpose in life right now? I'm just working and maybe hanging out with friends. And then usually my response has been like, well, then I must take on some form of responsibility, because I've learned that more often than not, just saying yes to people asking for help or offering it more often than not will give you some purpose, and then you will find fulfillment in it. And maybe it can be kind of selfish in a way, like I need fulfillment. But it shouldn't necessarily be. But more often than not, I've said that phrase a lot, I guess, but it tends to be that you find a way to serve.
Yeah.
And then you can then be purposeful and intentional with that. And it teaches you a lot about, I think, leadership, servanthood teaches you a lot about leadership, but then it teaches you a lot about love. And when you serve in any form, to talk about love, I guess, for a second, man, does it teach you what it means to like just love other people that you don't often think about loving in that type of way, like a brotherly love. Because when you're doing something that might not necessarily feel like it's for someone else in the right away, and then you kind of start to learn, like for you, if you're doing live stream, I could imagine in the beginning, it's like, I'm just doing this for, I'm just, this is all like, it's all technology or whatever.
Pressing buttons.
You're just pressing buttons. Yeah. But when Chad says something like today where he goes, 60,000 people around the world, or we've had 60,000 podcast listens around the world on his sermons, right? In the past year, which is insane. Man, the weight must hit you differently, I would imagine, because it's like, it changes from just like, I'm doing this for however many people are listening live right now, or I'm just doing this for Chad, to the fact that whatever way you're serving, you're doing it for a whole lot more people that are around the world. Mm-hmm. And ultimately you're doing it for God.
Yeah.
But the impact is seen around the world, which is just so cool.
And kind of when you were saying like doing it for the right reasons and doing it for God, I myself have asked this question, and I've seen other people ask this question, where they can kind of get really zoned in and they're like, shoot, man, why am I just helping out around the church to make myself feel fulfillment so I can feel something in me, and maybe I shouldn't do it because I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. And you can do it for the wrong reasons. That's a true statement. You can be doing good things for the wrong reason, but don't ever delude yourself into thinking that you shouldn't do something good just because you're doing it for the wrong reason. Because you get so zoned in. Zone out a little bit, zoom out a little bit. Yeah. If you're doing it for the wrong reasons, figure out how to do it for the right reasons, but don't stop doing it.
If it's good.
If it's good. It's so much better
to determine
do
whether
it.
it's good or not is to like you said, zoom out and to look at it like the activity you're doing or whatever it is, the way you're serving, look at it like biblically.
Yeah.
Like,
I've talked to the guy in the chair, just like, I feel like I am doing this only to, I love helping people, but it makes me feel really good. And I'm afraid that I'm doing it just for the feeling. And then it's just, it kind of feels like someone's smacking you across the face. Like the guy in the chair did. He took off his glove and he just smacked me with it. That didn't happen. But you realize, like, I'm going to work on doing this for the right reason, but I should never stop doing it, right?
You know what that is?
What's that?
That is, like we've talked about before, that is the devil. That
He's
is those are those
truth.
birds perching in your branches, right?
Yeah.
Like he's talked to me similarly about just when I'm like, I think I should be doing this, I want to do this thing, but I feel like either I'm not the right person for it or whatever it is. It's funny how Satan uses the things that we're doing that are good and then kind of twists them to be like, well,
that are helping us grow and helping the people around us grow. And he's going, well, maybe you shouldn't do it.
But then he uses this other thing. He uses this other thing that we know we should stay away from, which is pride, right? Yeah. And it's like, instead of being like, hey, feel prideful, he's like, you don't want to feel prideful, do you? Well, you don't want to feel like you're just doing this for yourself, do you? Well, then you shouldn't be doing it at all. Like it's so, and I don't think a lot of Christians think about Satan in this way. We've talked about this before. He is an adversary. He's good at what he does. Yeah. He's good at what he does, and he's good at doing it weird ways.
Dude,
why would he just... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, he was already like super big brain, like outthinking humanity when we were created.
Yeah.
Because like he didn't go up to Eve, like Chad said in the sermon. He didn't go up to Eve and go like, hey, bow down and worship me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like, hey, he doesn't want you to eat that because he doesn't want you to become on his level and like
To be like him.
to be like him. But you want to be like him, right? Yeah. So then eat the fruit. And
Yeah. And well,
And
the point
so,
that Chad
like-
was making was that is a form of worship of him, right?
Yeah.
You're saying that like Satan is seeking ways for us to worship him instead of worshiping God. And it's not so simple as though he's saying, hey, worship me, bow down before me. It is, hey, worship me by not worshiping God.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah. And like if he was already doing that from the get-go, he's probably gotten pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Leading
Oh, that's an interesting thing. This is totally different, but
What?
does he gain skill over time?
Certainly.
Really?
I think so. Because he is not omniscient, nor is he
Right.
omnipotent.
So then he
means-
should be more effective now than he's ever been, right?
Well, he's got way more tools.
dude, he's having
his toolbox is 30 million times larger than it was.
Right.
I think he's got more ways, and by necessity, he's gotten better at it.
That's interesting. I've just never
yeah,
thought
I
about
think that he's gotten better. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cuz dude, in the West,
I would
he
like to
doesn't
ask a biblical scholar about that.
Yeah.
To be like, I mean, obviously they're not going to be like, oh, well, it says in verse this that, yes. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it'd be
I
interesting
mean,
to
now
think about.
he's not even having people worship other deities.
Yeah.
He's just
doesn't need to.
having them
Worship themselves.
Worship each other. and
worship themselves or each other or just
Yeah.
not God.
Yeah. It's not like Satan requires you to worship Baal for a W, for a win. He just needs you to not worship God.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like obviously we're making some statements that maybe theologically aren't 100% sound.
Yeah.
But if nothing else, like if Satan hasn't gotten better, a true statement is he's got more tools and more ways to do it.
Yeah.
So
Because every human innovation is basically one more tool for him to use should he choose.
yeah.
Right. Every single way that humanity changes, our lives on Earth change is just one more avenue.
Yeah, every time we make a technological advancement, I think there is an area 90% of the time that it can be utilized to reach more people with Christ, and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's another way that we can delve into ourselves and ignore Christ.
And usually it starts from the delving into ourselves.
Unfortunately.
Like, oh, this is the reason we have this now is because it's some form of self-worship or some form of, like, social media wasn't necessarily a horrible thing. I mean, it's beating a dead horse by just talking about the, villainy of social media, I suppose. But the idea behind it is, well, whoever made it probably was to gain fame and money. But still, the idea behind it that's sent out there is like, we'll connect with people that you couldn't
The
connect with in any
marketing
other
for it
way.
originally.
And everything like that. It's like, well, it makes sense. But obviously, it's still not like it was being crafted from the beginning to be like, here's a way for Christian fellowship and evangelizing. And we have to, one thing as I've been kind of honing in a little bit more on how I want to go forward in representing Christian influence to people, because that's something we're going to have to be doing more wholeheartedly now, and actually going out and talking to people and getting them to help is, it took me a little while to be able to like commit to being serious in saying that I really believe in this being a mission field, kind of. Not because I didn't believe it, because I did. I was like, oh yeah, clearly I see the need for reaching people online in this way, and the way we're doing it, and then to more effectively do it in this way. But like, it's an awkward thing to say that you believe in, because I think my assumption, because typically I tend to already assume what people will think of me and then do whatever I can to make sure they don't think that, whether or not they were going to or not. Because there's no way I could possibly, this is just a problem I have in my brain. But like most conversations, like I'm like, if I say this, what is this person going to think of me? Let's say it in a way to make sure they don't. Yeah. And they may never have thought that. So I have to, that's the thing that I have to do better. But yeah, for a while it's been like, well, if I tell someone I'm doing this thing and it involves video games, they're going to dismiss it.
Yeah. Immediately
dismiss it. Be like, well, video games are, first of all, how could they ever be used for God? And also, they're just for fun. And also, people spend too much time doing them. And also, like all these things that are bad, or even what I would consider misconceptions about video games.
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, all those things they're saying, most of them could be true, maybe not as emphatically as they might believe them to be. But what they're saying about them are things that we're trying to tackle, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like, so our whole thing is that there are people that are online who are getting very little, if no, social or spiritual social interaction at all, or any secular social interaction outside of existing on a computer all day long. They wake up in the morning, well, probably at 10 a.m., get on their computer, they play whatever the new game is all day long until 2 a.m. and go to bed and then wake up and rinse and repeat the next day, right? They're not getting out of the house. And these are things that people have said forever about gamers, right? And there's a lot of us that do play video games that this isn't entirely true of, but there's so many more people now, talking about COVID earlier, so many more people now that is wholeheartedly true about. And instead of just continuing to fail, like I think many people have in being like, let's stop people from playing video games, because it's not like the issue is the video game in general. It's clearly an attitude toward them. So instead of being like, well, we're going to create a thing, like a ministry where we're just trying to get people not to play them, instead we're trying to meet them there because that's where they are. And I made this, I don't know if it was with Jude or somebody else, but the analogy was like, back in the day where the only mission field that we were considering as a church was the island off the coast of Africa where they've never heard of Jesus before. We have to go there, like the Nate Saint story, right? We have to go there, sail to this island and be like, it's terrifying because they've never heard of Jesus, that there are no Christians there. Hey, let me bring this thing to you. And you're just strictly evangelizing. Whereas now, for us, and I do believe this to be true, this online ministry we're going into a digital mission field to find uniquely, because now that I'm defining it as a mission field, and I'm comfortable doing that, because even if people do react poorly about the whole video game thing, I'll explain to them why we're actually trying to reach people with them. It is digitally, like, we are looking at this totally new mission field that is a mission field. It is that island. But what makes it so unique, cooler in some ways, but more difficult, is that it's not just evangelism. That island does have people on it that are already believers or have been exposed to it. And so we are effectively going into evangelism, like missionary work, and discipleship missionary work. We're moving forward online, finding these people, or they're finding us. We're trying to show them the love of God and trying to be like, hey, if you don't feel like you are loved, or you have friends, or you have anybody to talk to us. And then I think the ultimate goal, really, like the more I've been talking to Matt about it, I think the ultimate goal, well, I don't know if I should say this is the ultimate goal, but for me, I think a great thing would be to then see them encouraged and feeling like getting them into a church and then getting them away from just us.
Yeah.
Like, that is absolutely a goal. Because, like, they're online anyway already. If they're already spending so much time online, just in a sea of darkness, and if we can be a little haven for them to learn, to grow, and to do it in the way that they're already just existing, and then we are now effectively trying to then say, hey, you can always come to me with questions. You can always come to me to talk, and I will always do my best to help you. But let me get you involved in a church. Let me help you find, and that's what we've been trying to do. But I don't know why I started going off on that. But what were we talking about that made me start doing that?
Christian influence in Ireland.
I don't know. It's just it's a way that I've been thinking about it differently now than I've thought about it before, which is that I'm very comfortable saying I wholeheartedly believe that it is a mission field, and I'm excited to be involved in it as a mission field. And it's,
Yeah, we're not just trying to build like a hotel on this island. We're trying to equip them so they're not dependent on us, so that they can be strong enough to actually go out and then do what we do and then teach.
Because I think that the people will find, because I was that person at some point, right? Like, I think people will find as they are growing through this medium, they'll go, oh wait, this is only now. This is the milk, but I need the meat. Like, this is only so much. And they'll probably, I would hope, that they would realize through positive Christian discipleship and interaction that there is more, and that they not only should be seeking it out, but they do want to.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing the glimpses of that because this is still such at the beginning of it, but I'm seeing the glimpses of that with some people that I'm talking to. And man, it's exciting because man, God does this thing that is so magnificent, which is that that we go through trials of fire and pain and suffering so that we can more adequately be equipped to help others through it, but then also so that we can more adequately like take joy in and glorify him in the success of it, of successes of his ministry, right? And actually that is directly pulled from something I want to talk about, which is 1 Peter 4:12 and 13. We talked about before on a previous episode, the birds in our branches episode. And it's been a few episodes since then. And I wanted to talk about this right after, but we've had other things we talked about. It's fine. But when we talked about how effective Satan is at getting us like with stuff and getting to us and getting to our minds, and we talked about how he's going to, it seems as though when you're most passionately trying to serve God is when he's going to find ways to effectively try and push you the other direction. And those are those birds in your branches from the parable. I was like, man, I wish I just had a good passage ready to read, to use as the encouragement in the end of that, other than obviously just the parable. Because it feels like the parable is like pointing to the existence of it, obviously, and then I wanted something else. And this is a slight spin on it, but the next day, I believe it was the next day, I spent a long time, I guess sometimes this word sounds a little new agey, but I spent a long time meditating that next day, spiritually, just in my room alone. I turned all my electronics off and I was in and out of prayer and reading my Bible for about 7 hours. And I had some reasons for that because there's just some big decisions in my life right now and some things that are difficult. And Chad had talked to me about like, well, you should probably take an entire day where you're not, you know that you have no other responsibilities, but also you're just like giving up the opportunity of being pulled into them. And you're just dedicating that day to God and to seek answers from him. But I was reading through 1st and 2nd Peter, and I read something that to me is beautiful because it's talking about trials of fire that are fiery ordeals, and they're testing you and this thing, which is a common discussion in Christian circles. Of course it is, because a huge point of Christianity is to make sure people understand that being a Christian doesn't mean that you stop suffering, but instead that the suffering is worth it, right? And so I think about suffering a lot, not to sound weird, but like as a Christian, you think about suffering a lot, and you think about like, well, at least an appropriate response to it should be like, well, what can I learn out of this or whatever? But even if you don't have that, we do a lot of retrospective talk about suffering. And so I'll just read it here, but this just gives me a perspective on it that I hadn't had in in a picturesque way that I like. So it's 1 Peter 4:12 and 13. It says, "Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed." What I love about this is it says, rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ. So as we know, he suffered the weight of sin for us, right? To save us. And I love that it's worded in such a way that it says, in those fiery ordeals, we are sharing in the suffering that he felt, right? At least that is a way that I hadn't thought about it before. And I don't think that it is a wrong way to think about it. In those moments where you are feeling this weight of suffering or whatever it is, it could just be this weight of unassurance, or you feel like you're lost, or you're struggling with temptation, or physical malady, whatever it is, all these results of sin. We've talked before about how we should look at that and, of course, seek in what we could learn from it, or be patient and persevere through the suffering like Chad talked about today. And all of those things are true. But man, what a fantastic and tremendous thing to think about while you're suffering as well. That in some way, it's a new way of, because sometimes it's nice to have a feeling. It's a new way of having a feeling of closeness to Christ that you can't feel any other way. There's a lot of feeling, and there's a lot of times where you don't feel like a physical feeling the closeness of Christ. But what an interesting perspective that I haven't thought a lot about. Those moments where I'm like, I am feeling the suffering right now of sin. And then go, whoa. Because we're told to like, we go through trials so that we can more appropriately have empathy too for others. Like I have felt, or I do feel what you're feeling right now. Well, I've never considered the idea of that, but applying to my relationship with Christ. I've thought a lot about it being like, oh, this suffering, now I'm feeling it. I can feel it so that other people, when they feel it, I get it. But also, I mean, universally, when I feel it, I'm feeling what he has already felt. And in a way, there is such a closeness there that I don't get any other way too.
Yeah.
Or I should say that's different than any other feeling of closeness to him. I just think that's so cool. And I've been wanting to talk about it for a while.
Yeah, I like, we're called to share in our suffering with fellow believers. And so it's easy to overlook the very like intimate connection that you form, the intimate part of your relationship with Christ that is also sharing in the suffering. He is sharing in your suffering.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just this relational, like, you understand it. And I, even if it's so minuscule, also understand it.
Yeah.
Just a piece.
That's what I mean. Like we think a lot about how, of course, he understands it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to presume to say, oh, when I'm feeling the weight of a bad knee or whatever, I'm feeling what he felt. It's just like, it tells us here, rejoice in as much as you participate. You're participating in the suffering of Christ. It's fascinating. And it does go on to say that if you're insulted because of the name of Christ, you are blessed, for the Spirit of glory and God rests on you. And I think a lot of it too is pretty specifically referencing persecution. A lot of this is what it's talking about. But since it does give the introduction of, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, I think allows it to, of course, apply to the suffering of sin in general, right? Because it is talking about these fiery ordeals that are not just present, even though it may be specifically talking about a specific one, but it's saying that they are here to test you. Yeah. And as we know, so many results of sin are here to test us.
It's a very valid interpretation of the text, I think.
I think it's cool.
I think it's cool. I also do, yes.
It's just cool and based, man.
It is cool and based.
Like,
it is cool and based.
Just take joy. And then like we were saying earlier, like the experience of those fiery ordeals give you a new appreciation in the glorification of God's victory.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's astounding to think that.
Don't go out seeking pains just so that you can be like, no, then I'll be happier when things are happy. But like, it is truth.
Yeah.
Sorry, you started saying something.
Oh, it's astounding to think that you can go through something so monumental and real things like death of a loved one is a huge and terrible thing, or incredible loss or hardship in any regard. And when you overcome it, it's not made smaller by comparing it to what Christ went through. It is instead, it makes grander what Christ went through. And you're just like, oh my goodness, I fought and I still needed you to get through this thing that was so huge to me, and how much larger is what you went through, and you went through it for us.
So, and partly what I'm saying too is, and this is just like so you know that one time that you talked about when you were thinking a way that you like to picture the grandness and majesty of God is the robe thing, right? Understand what I'm about to say is kind of like a mental picture thing, like you were saying there. That image you have in your head isn't like a theological.
It's not a theological statement. Right? It is
However,
a romantic.
It is just a romantic image in your head that you turn to.
Trying to convey the feeling.
Right. Yeah. And so that is what I'm about to explain. This thing that I'm talking about with 1 Peter 4:12 and 13 is in some ways kind of connected to this thing that I do that I don't know if I've talked about on the podcast, but I call it time travel. And it's this thing where when I'm like, if I think, it's really cerebral and stupid, but when there's something either coming up that I'm not looking forward to, or just in general, I'll purposely think about in this moment what the moment will look like when this thing is done. in the future.
Yeah.
And then when that moment happens in the future, I will then purposely think back on the moment where I thought about that moment, right? Now, hang on. And it makes it feel like no time passed at all. And so I will do this with good things too. If there's something I'm looking forward to in the future, like a thing that I'm like, man, that would be beautiful, I will take a mental picture of the moment that I thought that thought. Because there's always a first time you think that about something, right? Whatever it is. Like maybe you want to be married someday and you're like, oh, it's going to be beautiful standing up there getting married someday. Well, there's the first time you think that. And so when I have those first good thoughts about something, I always go, this moment right now, this is the first time I thought about this. And there's going to be a time in the future where I will look back on this moment. It will make it so much sweeter because I'll be like, wow. And I call it time travel. And so I'm, in a way, this verse, that is also kind of what I'm doing with it. I'm not at all proclaiming that I'm time traveling and physically sharing in the suffering of Christ.
Wait.
No.
But what I am saying is that in a way, that is kind of how my mind is thinking about it.
Yes.
In that I am sharing in the suffering of Christ and almost B-theory time like with your whole thing. I am like, this suffering that I'm going through right now, I am tapping into, not tapping into, I don't want to be weird about it, but like, it's like in those moments and in those moments alone, there is a specific avenue of closeness to him.
Okay.
Closeness to him in that moment, right? Not just closeness to him in general, but closeness to him in that moment that is so cool to me. And I don't want to overdo this in any way that I think that this should become a focus or a worship of its own necessarily.
Yeah.
But what I mean is just like, when I was sitting there reading that, I immediately broke my rule when I was sitting there for, like I'm not doing electronics for 7 hours or whatever. And I turned to a few people that were on the Discord that I had been talking to and I was like, they need to hear this right now because, and I don't know if I can properly convey the way my mind makes it feel to me, but because it gives me a sense of comfort that I've never felt. And it's not like life is just about comfort, but God does give us comfort and his word gives us comfort.
If
and
I
it
can,
should. Go for it.
I want to reiterate how the thing you referenced that I feel about with my relationship with God and the way because I do the exact same thing, the time travel thing, though I've never actually thought about doing it with good things, and I will take that to heart.
I don't know. It's still up in the air whether I think it's a good idea or not to do it with good things, because I think I will then subjugate myself to the whole like, when things go by too fast.
Yeah.
And then you're like, but I don't think I'm doing that.
No.
Because I think with bad things, I purposely do it so I can be like, this will make the bad stuff go by faster.
Yeah.
But with good things, I'm trying to, I think like people say, live in the moment so that I will remember the good things. But yeah, it's different.
I've
So when
never thought to live like this.
Oh, really?
Never.
Okay.
I think it might be the definition of what people really mean, whether they know it or not, when they say things like be present.
Yes.
I think it is to be like, when you think about the hypothetical good that could come in the future, really take a mental picture of the moment that you're in right now. This is not like spiritual advice necessarily, but it can maybe be applied. Because man, then later you can think back on that moment and be like, I don't know, it just makes it sweeter.
So when I'm deep in worship or just trying to picture like when I'm deep in prayer, I get the visual of the Colossus statue version of Jesus, God, this massive thing, and he's wearing the robe, and one thread of one tassel comes down, and when I hold on to it, it's like a massive hemp rope, and it's just one thread from the tassel, and I'm holding on to it, and just through that one minuscule thread, I feel I can visualize and better feel the overwhelming love of God
And his majesty.
and his
grandeur,
majesty
right?
compared to the love I'm feeling. And when I do the time travel thing, I pick a moment before something I'm not looking forward to, and I imagine a pin going into, it's funny because it's not B theory for me time, it's a line, it's linear. I imagine a pin going in and a set length of yarn
Yes,
that
that's
is tied to
exactly
the pin. And then when I drop that second pin, there is a mental tug, right? Because the yarn has reached its limit and it is this tug. And so you feel this mental like, boom, and no time has passed, right?
Yes.
But when you're doing it with the moment of suffering with Jesus, then in the same way that I'm holding onto that minuscule thread of one tassel that is this giant hemp rope for me, that pin is being put in his suffering, and then that yarn that is only so long connected to the other pin that is going to where I am right now. Boom. And it's taut. It's pulled tight.
Yeah.
And you're holding on to that. And it's going not just through space, it's going through time, and it's connecting you back to that moment with Christ. And you can touch it and you can feel it and you can hold on to it. And it's this physical linking moment between them. And I just feel like, at least for people listening like me, that you can help visualize this just like thing.
So Jude and I are we're applying something that we do just in general to something, it's like reading this verse made me realize like, oh, this kind of makes me feel a certain way that I feel when I do this thing, which is just this time travel thing. Yeah. Now I will say, it doesn't say, I don't think it necessarily says in the Bible to do this weird mental trick that you're not talking about, because it is just like a mental trick. I will tell you though, if you struggle with anxiety or like specifically the type of like anxiety where there's something coming up that you are not looking forward to because you don't want to do it or it makes you nervous, I will tell you, try this thing out, because I do struggle with that and it's helped me a lot. If you think in this moment, now I don't know, I've told my sister about this and I don't know if it worked for her, but like there's a really difficult thing coming up like in the next few days, and one of the worst things about difficult things coming up is like the days before, because you're just looking forward to it and you're like, I don't know. It might just be me because I'm strange, but I think about in this moment, I'm not looking forward to this thing I have to do, but there will be a moment right after it's done. Because you've experienced that moment so many times in life where the thing you were not looking forward to ends, and you can definitively say to yourself, it is over. Like I don't have to do this thing anymore, right? And so I think to myself, well, since I'm aware that this phenomenon exists when something is over, there will be a moment where this thing that I do not want to do, because it's going to be hard, will be over. And I can, without wondering, I wonder if I'm going to have to keep worrying about this. You will know, oh, it's over. Yeah. And so when I tell myself days before, there's going to be a moment where it's over, and then there is that moment, and I look back at the moment where I told myself that, and I go, here it is. Like, it actually did happen. It just makes it makes it go doink. And like you just said, a rope goes taut. Those two moments connect and you realize, oh, no, it was easier than I thought it'd be, or it was just like, it went by faster than I thought it'd be and I got through it.
Because where did you guys learn this trick?
I just started doing it.
We both independently came up with it and then realized.
Because it's a little different for each of us, but I used it because of anxiety. And it took me a long time to learn to just take joy in the moment that something that you hated having to do or that was hard to do. It took me a long time to learn to take joy in the exact second that it was definitively over. But then when I learned that, it was very helpful. But then the next time something came along that I was looking forward to, I was like, oh, remember last time when you learned that there's a second that it's definitively over and that second feels so sweet? Well, think about the second that will happen when this thing is over. And then when I did, I thought back on it, and then all of a sudden it felt like time travel. And I was like, well, I'm going to do this every time. And even though I'm self-aware of it, it still works. Yeah. When I'm really nervous about a speech I have to give or whatever, I'm like, there's going to be a second that it's all over and I'm going to feel a weight off my shoulders. And then I just look forward to what that second might look like. And then when that second happens, it was over.
I want to clarify.
I don't know if it'll work for you though. But
the moment that you choose, well, this is the moment before the bad thing has happened and I'm deciding what the moment will be after. You don't, from that point on, just disassociate until it's over.
That's not what we mean.
The reason you do it is because if you have anxiety about something, which I did it for the same reason, I think it's a different type of anxiety, but you're trying to get rid of this anxiety. And what doesn't work with anxiety, at least from anyone who's ever felt it, I think would agree, is just not thinking about it.
Yeah.
So what you do instead is you think about the moment that it's over. And in that way, you aren't just disassociating, but you're kind of just removing the anxiousness because you're not thinking about the anxiousness. You're thinking about the point that it's over. And then, contrary to disassociating, you are more present in the moment to deal with the thing that you dislike doing. And then to get to the point where you don't have to worry about the anxiety because now you're at the point where it's over.
We might be making it a little contrived and like and weirdly cerebral because it's somebody else might just be like, oh, that's just called thinking about the fact that it will be over.
Yes.
But
a stoicist would look at us and say, you're playing mind games, grow up.
Because if you have listened to the entire podcast, you know how strange sometimes Jude and I are about talking about something and then talking about something.
The meta.
But for whatever reason, that makes things better in our minds. But insincerity, like, it is just, it's strange because when you think about the fact that it will be over at some point and whatever it is that you have to do, I think that is enough to make it so it's like, well, I'm just not thinking about the fact. Because usually when you're anxious about something that's coming up, you're thinking about just how hard it's going to be. And then you get to the point where it's happening and you're like, I've just been thinking about how hard this is going to be. And now here I am. So in a weird way, it's like if there is a string of yarn and it starts at where you start being anxious about something coming up, and then it just ends at where the thing is happening. That's pretty tough. Because then you were just like suffering until you're in the suffering thing that you're suffering for or whatever. But instead, you just extend that line and make it like, oh, here's the instigation of difficulty and anxiety, but I'm not going to let the line end there. I'm preemptively putting a pin in after it's over. Yeah. And it's like you can kind of feel the ease of it being over a little early.
Time and space folds until the 2 points meet. And then
so we're only talking about this because we kind of shifted. This is just something Jude and I do to deal with anxiety. Yeah. But the only reason I brought it up is because in a weird way, that phenomenon of that experience in my mind when I do that time travel thing, I'm kind of feeling that with this verse. Because when it says you are suffering, you are feeling, or let me read it specifically, you are participating in the sufferings of Christ. It makes me think kind of in that like time travel way. There is a pin right here in this suffering where I'm at. And there's a pin back there in that suffering where he suffered for us. And in a way, it connects it like I've never felt connected to him in that kind of way. Bro. Because I feel connected to him, of course, at times. What?
No, you guys kind of just like, this kind of just like blew my mind.
Yeah, dude. Welcome
so
to
I
the
don't mean
better
to say
time travel discussion.
I just want to be clear. I don't mean to say, that's true. I don't mean
this
to
is
say,
a much better time travel discussion.
Because it's not time travel. That's why in the time travel episode where Jude goes, Jerry, do you believe in time travel? I went, yes. And he goes, don't do that thing.
And I like that you guys think about your entire thing. You think of it through A theory and you think of it through B theory.
Opposing ways.
You're right. It's because, no, you know why? It's because I don't actually understand B theory. So when I say, like B theory, I'm probably wrong.
Maybe, but that's neither here nor there.
But actually, I am thinking it like B theory because in a way, it's almost as though that suffering of him on the cross is actually happening right now, and I'm tapping into it. Yeah. And then you were like, well,
I'm holding onto a cord that stretches back. That's right.
I think that's
right.
That is so funny. No, but I just want to be clear, and I've probably already said this 100 times.
No, let me be clear.
I don't want people to think that we're saying this like thing that we do with anxiety, so it makes us feel like we did skip into the future. Is what I'm applying to this verse. Instead, the phenomenon of like feeling that happens when we do that kind of like, or it's almost as like the image in my head for that is an image that came to mind with this verse. That's the only connection. And it is pretty cool.
I like that you guys...
To try and simplify it, in my own words, it is, there are very few things that we as people feel that transcend time, right? Mm-hmm. Regardless of whether my feelings really are transcending time, they feel as if they are. Mm-hmm. And the phenomenon we do to get rid of anxiety has that feeling. It transcends time.
Yeah.
And the phenomenon of sharing in the suffering with Christ is a feeling that is so hard to describe that we have to use analogies for it, because it is a feeling that goes beyond the constraints of time.
Yeah.
You are feeling like you are sharing in something that happened hundreds of years apart, and yet you still feel so close to them. And there's so few feelings like that, and that's why we're using this analogy.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on that? Or we've gone about 13 minutes over what I had intended for us to go this episode. We're in
ground beef pounded that thing.
I hope that those listening enjoyed that conversation. I actually really enjoyed this one. Even though maybe it's just because I rambled for a long time. But this is something that's fun to think about. But yeah, there's some applications in there. Jude, I think you summarized it pretty well there. I hope two things. Go read 1 Peter. It's a wonderful book. And go read that part in there where it's talking about suffering, because I think it's tremendously impactful. And study it. Spend some time with it. Pray. And also, not so spiritual here, but if you do deal with anxiety, try out that little time travel trick. Because it's cool. Yeah. All right. If there's nothing else, any final thoughts, boys?
Super small. When we were talking about COVID, I just had a thought, and maybe someone needs to hear it, but our church had that day where it was like 10 people, right?
Yeah.
And we just talked about the meeting we had today
Yeah.
in areas that our church is still really struggling. If you have experienced something similar in your church, don't feel discouraged by the fact that you had a day where you had 10 people and you were struggling and you're still struggling now. Instead, take great joy in knowing that the fact that you had a day where 10 people showed up to church, and now, despite that, you're still together as a church. You're still fighting. It's not that you've died or you're dying, you're fighting. And I think that's very encouraging. That's why when I think about that day where we had 10 people show up, it's not discouraging in any way, because now we're struggling and some days we have 40 people, but that's 40 people. That's 4 times what we had on that 10-person day.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Thank you for listening. Sincerely, when we say this, know that we mean it. We love you very much. I posted this on the Discord, but our podcast, we got a little yearly recap thing from Buzzsprout. And obviously we haven't been doing the podcast for a year, but over 2022, we had I think it was just at like 8,000 downloads, like 70 countries, all this crazy stuff. And that makes it very surreal, I know, for us, because it's weird that we're doing this thing. Jude had somebody ask for his autograph. I mean, it's this thing that we're doing, that we believe in, that we love, and people care. Like, how often do people get to say that? And definitely, how often have we been able to say that? I think it is so cool. And honestly, all the glory goes to God. But sincerely, we love you very much. Thank you for listening.
Roll the outro.
Just kidding.
I end the program by saying, you've made this day a special day by just your being you. There's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are.